welcome to Copper Cat Books, where we're continuing our author interview series. Today, I am literally super stoked to meet James Swanson. So, welcome, James.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Super stoked to be here.
Tell us what inspired you to write your first. This is your first book, right?
This is my first book, yeah. So I'd had the idea in mind for a while. I had a business in printing in town, and I grew it from scratch, and I built it to the biggest printing company in town. And people always, there's two parts to it. A lot of people used to tell me, it's a really great story. You should tell your story one day. And then the second part of why I wrote it, because there's a lot of people that didn't know my backstory in the printing industry. And plus, I'm an avid reader. It was always like a bucket list thing for me to write a book. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun writing it.
So it includes I kind of glanced through the chapters, and it kind of goes through pre-COVID, post-COVID. What are some of the takeaways you want your readers to get from the book?
The main thing is, I made it to be like a motivational book. Like I'm like no college degree, no business experience, and I started my business from scratch. My personal balance sheet was in the red, and it's just, I want to send the message out that anybody can do it with hard work and determination. So that's the big story. And it's a fun story to tell. There's a lot of interesting little adventures I went on my little trip through my printing industry career. So but the main thing is it's a motivational. There's a lot of business lessons in there.
Right. That's what I saw too. Is I think there's a lot for people to glean from, because as you probably well know and share in the book, there's been a lot of changes in the printing industry.
Yeah, and there still is, and there still is, and that kind of ties into one of the reasons why I sold the company. But I had a little fun with it. It's just kind of my personality. I'm like a outside of the box thinking kind of guy. I do things in an unorthodox way, so I wrote the book the same way. So I had a little bit of fun. Like all of the chapters, I put punk rock songs on them that I thought kind of represented that chapter a little bit. So I just had a little bit of fun with that, and yeah, it was just it takes you through my youth. I was a pretty rebellious kid, raised by a single mom, punk rock kid from Hollywood, and it takes it up to where I started the company and the reasons why I did that. First, it goes through my journey through the printing industry, and then when I started the company, then I moved out to Vegas. I moved out to Vegas. I knew two people.
Wow. Yeah.
And I ended up, when I sold the company, I was the biggest grand format printer in the city. So it's inspirational, motivational. That was the main reason why I wrote it. That's the main message I'm trying to send.
What differences do you feel from moving from California to Vegas for a business person? Do you feel like there's differences, things that you had to navigate? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking because the main thing I did work-wise the first 3 years of my business before I moved out here, because I was just working from home, just me working at home in my underpants. I was doing sports stadiums. So I was flying around the country. So I was flying out of LAX. I was flying out of Orange County Airport. I lived in Long Beach, and it was a lot of driving and a lot of hassle, a lot of traffic, and it was hard. I was renting a small house in Belmont Shores, and I lived at the beach, and I was partying a lot, and I was starting to have success with my business. And I thought to myself, wow, if I don't get out of here, if I want to make something out of this business I just started, I got to get out of here and settle down. And I had one of my friends had moved out here to Henderson before me, and I wanted to buy a house, and I wanted to get a dog, and I thought McCarran Airport's super easy to travel out of. So those were my three main things. I mean, I wasn't even thinking Vegas wise. I was thinking, how do I get to the sports stadiums easier, and how do I make my life calm down so I could work harder? And it took me a while before I started getting into the Vegas stuff, but once I did, it was like a snowball. Like once I got into my first casino, everything just went crazy from there. So honestly, when I decided to move out here, it wasn't because of Vegas. It ended up being a good decision because obviously Nevada is a good place for businesses. No state taxes. It's pretty attractive.
That is a pretty attractive reason.
Yeah, but I didn't even think at the time that it's probably the biggest printing city in the country for the kind of printing that I do, with all the events and all the casinos.
Yeah.
And at that time, I didn't have any idea that the sports teams were going to come to town, the Golden Knights and the Raiders. So it ended up being a super good decision that I made, but I didn't make it for the reasons that you would think.
Right.
Yeah.
But sometimes that is. Sometimes you got to go with maybe what drives you. And you kind of laid out, thinking like what things are most important and where you might be able to, and, choosing something you were passionate about.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the reason why I was going after the sports stuff, is because I'm a sports fan. And when you get to go to NFL teams that are your favorite teams and walk around the stadium, and you get to design stuff and print it and put it in their stadium, it's pretty cool. I was having a lot of fun. And it motivates you too to work harder when you're doing things that you like. So I was always in the sports stuff and in the music stuff. So through some fortunate sponsorships that I made, I ended up working my way into the music stuff, and I ended up printing backdrops for my favorite bands. So it ends up being really cool. Like, it's a lot of fun when you're at a concert watching one of your favorite bands and you printed the backdrop, and as soon as they drop it, all your friends are patting you on the back. It's a great feeling. And so, I mean, I was working hard, but I was having a lot of fun.
What are some tips for people out there that are in a creative field? Because I do feel like there's pros and cons. There's some navigation of turning it into a business.
My advice would be just to think outside the box. Don't do the same thing everybody else does. You have to find ways to make yourself stand out. And that's what I did. Like I said before, unorthodox is the way I built my business. And just be yourself. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Focus on what you're doing, and take care of the customers. That's the biggest thing. Like, I think the biggest reason for my success was I took care of the customers. The customer service was my biggest thing. So that's the advice I would have. Just be genuine, be yourself, be authentic.
In writing the book, when you decided to write your story, did you pre-plan the book? Did you free flow it? Kind of like just start spinning it out? Was it a long process? Talk about the book process a bit.
Okay, so I had a notebook that I'd been writing little notes in for years, and not in any random order, not in any specific category. Just don't forget to say this, don't forget to say that. And I probably for 2 or 3 years I did that, and I was procrastinating and not starting the book. And finally I went through a unfortunate life change by I lost one of my dogs. And so I lost one of my dogs, and I had sold my company. So I went from working 16 hours a day to being at home and not doing a heck of a lot. And I lost my dog. I'm like, and because I've lost dogs before, but before I had my work, in my shop and all my employees, I could bury myself in that, and it was fine. But I used losing my dog Charlie as motivation, and I started writing, and I didn't have any idea if I could even write a book. I mean, I put things on the side of buildings. I'm not an author, but I'm a reader. So I thought, okay, and I'm kind of infamous for short responses on emails and texts too. So there was a lot of people that go, James wrote a book. He barely responded to emails. But once I started writing, it was natural, and it was kind of easy. And I was going through, and I didn't write everything in order. So I wrote the chapters all out of order, and I was sending them to my friend. He was helping me edit, and he's a journalist. And he goes, when are you going to put all this stuff together? I go, I don't know. Once I finish all the parts, we'll just figure out, what goes where. Because some of it's chronological, but a few of the things we put, in different orders. And I just did that based on my reading knowledge and what other people had done. But it was fun. I went through all my old hard drives and dug up old workflow sheets to see the dates of projects and remind me of things I did. And it was a lot of fun. It took me 7 months, the writing part, and then we put it all together in the end. And another thing is, I was doing some research. Okay, like how many words are in a memoir? So the internet's telling me 60 to 90,000 words in a memoir, and when I first started, I thought, like, wow, I don't think I could write that many words. There's no way. But as I started going through, I was like, dang, I'm writing a lot of words, and I ended up writing 137,000 words.
Did you really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So and my friend I said that was editing, his name's Keith Jaco. He says, we got to pare this down a little bit. So we went through, and he goes, I don't know where to take stuff out. He goes, it's all pretty interesting stuff, But we did end up whittling it down to 125,000 words, so that's about where it sits now. But it was fun, and to be honest, it was easier than I thought.
Were there challenges in publishing? What kind of route did you choose for?
Well, I knew I was going to self-publish it. My goal wasn't really like, okay, I'm going to try to be a bestseller or sell a million books. I did it. It was therapeutic for me, after losing Charlie, and it was a fun story to tell. It was fun. I was super stoked taking the trip down memory lane with all the things that I did and rebuilding all the stories. But I started doing research on publishers, like self-publishing, like hybrid publishers, because I really didn't know anything about it. So I was kind of Googling things and relying on what I could find. And I have a friend of mine named Vince Kitchen that wrote a book, and I'd read his book, and I asked him, what did you do? And he introduced me to the guy that ended up publishing it.
Oh, nice.
And I had talked to a bunch of people, but the guy basically said to me, it's the thing where, you've got to pay for the editing, and he pays, and he puts it all out. He does all the work, and he got it on just about every book website in the world. I mean, they're selling it in just about every country, different rupees and pounds and euros. So once I connected with him, it was pretty easy. He did, like I said, my friend Keith edited it, but then this guy did a final edit on the grammar and punctuation, and he helped me get it out there. I already had my background is in graphics, so I already had the cover done myself. But yeah, it was pretty easy. I'll give a shout out to Dave Reeser from Blue Jay Publishing in Ojai, California. He did a lot of good work for me, helped me out, and yeah, it was a lot easier than I thought. He gave me a great deal, and he was super supportive. So it was, and I loved the way the books looked in the end. So it was good. It was a good experience.
Yeah, the book does look. If you want to hold it up for the people seeing the interview, because the artwork, I think, speaks a lot to your background in punk rock. I think you mentioned.
Yeah. So the main picture is the Statue of Liberty in front of New York, New York. The project I'm most notorious for is when the Golden Knights made the playoffs their first year as an expansion team, they asked me to put a jersey on the Statue of Liberty.
Oh.
So that's a jersey that I put on the Statue of Liberty, and that's actually me standing there looking at it, and someone took the picture from behind. And then the background is with the punk rock and the wall is an actual wall that was in my shop. I built my shop to be like an industrial playground, cool space, creative space, and we had a bunch of galvanized wall sheets around there with spray paint on them. So I told my tagger, I said, just paint logos of the punk rock bands on there. So he did that, and it ended up pretty cool. And it was always, whenever people came to my shop, that's always, they wanted to take a picture and put it on social media, and they always chose to stand in front of that punk rock wall. So that was always kind of fun too.
That's huge. I mean, right there, you've given us a whole bunch of marketing tips.
Yeah.
And though, for some, I mean, if you're able, finding a publisher, paying for an editor, it sounds like it paid off.
Yeah, it was. And like I said, my friend Keith really helped me out. I've played baseball with him my whole life, and I've known him since I was 18. And like I said, he's got a degree in journalism, and he used to write for one of the big papers in LA, and he wrote PR for a bunch of the politicians in Ventura County in California. So he's like a guy I really respect. And plus he wrote all of the verbiage and stuff for my websites and my PR releases for my business. So it was kind of natural to go to him to help me edit it. Right. The one challenge was, one of the big things in the book was it was really important to me to sound authentic, and I wanted to write the way I talk, because I kind of have that surfer California Hollywood slang, the way I talk. Right. And it's just the way I talk. And I told him, he's like a professional journalist, so he was having a hard time with changing the way I wrote and stuff.
Right.
And he'd say things like theretofore and forthwith, and I'm like, dude, I don't talk like that. I go, you can't change the words to that. Everybody's gonna know that that's not me. So that we had a bunch of laughs about that, but yeah, he helped me out a lot. So.
No, and that is important. And you kind of answered my question, because I was thinking what roadblocks or challenges you felt were the most difficult in the process of writing, or was there ever a moment where you literally just thought, gosh, I don't know if I can finish this. I really want to do it, but am I going to get it done?
Yeah, honestly, no. I have no idea. From 2002, when I started the company, I kept really good records, and that surprises me, because I'm really not that kind of guy. but I found I had a bunch of old hard drives, and I plugged them into my computer, and I pulled up old workflow sheets. I pulled up old invoices. I had pictures of the jobs. There's a lot of pictures in the books from the 90s, like the late 90s, when of jobs I was doing at sports stadiums before I started my own company. So it made it easy. I'd go through all my archives, and I'd write notes, and the chapters. It made them go really easy. And then in the youth parts, when I didn't have any screaming images stuff to go through, I was just kind of remembering like what kind of car I was driving, where I was living, what album came out that year, like stuff like that. That was reminding me of the timeline of what the things that were happening to me. So it was, I never really got any roadblocks. I never got any writer's block. I was surprised how easy it was.
That's great. It's like it was just meant to come together in a way.
Yeah, it was. And like I said, I was super stoked taking that trip down memory lane. It was a lot of fun. Like, oh yeah, I did that. That was, it was cool.
What's one last thing you want to tell any of the writers out there listening? Any tips or tidbits you want to share with them on the process of writing or publishing? You've shared so much today, but
I think the hardest part is just starting. I think once you get started and you get yourself into a role, it's easy to do it, and just tell yourself, okay, I'm going to do this every day. And if you sit down and you start writing and you feel comfortable, keep writing. When you get to a place where you're uncomfortable or feel like you're at a block, then stop and start the next day. That's what I did. I mean, I'm a Googler, and I Googled so many things like how many words a day do authors write and stuff like that, and like 2,500 words a day is like good for them. And I'd start writing, and I'd look down, and I'd be up 3,000 words. Like, I'm not ready to stop yet, and I'd keep going. So I would say just start the process, and you'll be surprised how easy it is.
Wonderful. And so, James, do we have a signing scheduled for you soon at Coppercat?
Yes, I'm going to be here on September 6th from 12 to 3. And 100% of the proceeds from any book sales that I have are going to be donated 50-50 between Henderson Animal Shelter and Boys and Girls Club of Henderson.